meeting after class hours because we wanted to keep this as an informal meeting. I will just take 2 minutes to run through the core question that I thought was relevant to all of us at this point of time amidst the huge deluge of media and other opinion on Afghanistan. So therefore, I wanted to focus this session firmly onto national interest. There are a few aspects of national interest which I thought we could put across the table to our speaker Colonel Sanjay Pandey, and he could then take those points over and frame the discussion around those. So primary question that we all need to ask as students, as academicians, and as citizens of the country is, what is national interest? Are we debating this issue on the basis of national interest or not? So what is national interest? So basic primary interests of any nation are survival and identity. What is survival is very clear. The nation has to survive in the form that it is. Identity is further divided into territorial boundaries, which are very vital for any nation. If you are a nation state, boundaries are essential. So then we have political identity. Each nation has a political system. For example, India has a democracy to speak of. So is the Afghan response that we are giving based on uh, national interest in terms of our territorial boundaries, in terms of the sustenance of our political system? These are the questions. Then we also have a cultural identity. So cultural identity is also, it comprises historical, cultural values. So is our association with Afghanistan in the changed scenario looking at the preservation or sustenance of our cultural identity? These are the primary interests that any state has. Then there are secondary interests. Amongst the secondary interests, we have protection of our citizens abroad. We have the continuation and the enduring of diplomatic immunities, diplomatic relations as we have it. So is our Indian actions in Afghanistan looking at our secondary interests? We have some permanent, every nation state has some permanent interests. Okay. And so what are these are long-term interests of any nation state. So in the context of India, is our engagement with Afghanistan looking at the, I request everyone to mute. So are we looking at ourselves as a Vishwaguru? Is our engagement, is that our permanent national interest, and are we looking at that when we are dealing with Afghanistan? Then we have general interests. I'm going through this very quickly. I have given myself 2 minutes. I hope I can stick to that. The general interests are economic interests, trade interests, diplomatic relations. Are we looking at any of these while we are looking at changing context in Afghanistan? Lastly, we have every nation state has some specific interests. For example, India is a third world country, and in the international arena, we would be wanting to look at better economic conditions in the international world. So we will be looking at gearing the new international economic order to the interests of India. We have been trying to do that in many forums. India has taken up the role of a leader. So these are broadly what are the contours of national interest are, Colonel Pandey, and I would, request you to speak about national interests as I have defined them. I'm sure I have missed out a lot of, a lot of points which you will be able to tell us. And then in the second part, or you could just integrate it with what our
Uh, Sorry to disturb you all. Sanjay sir, like I think there's some
Yeah.
trouble with the MAM network, so I think you can start with the
Yes.
platform.
Good evening, everyone. First and foremost, Arshdeep, thanks a lot for the introduction, and also Dr. Sonali. of whom I'm quite a big fan after I have read her work and her work in particular Kashmir and the engagement that she has been doing, and tremendous amount of contribution. This talk, before we actually come to the subject proper, certain things I would just like to, in very brief, tell you. Probably by the time you end today's session, I would leave more questions in your mind than I would answer. There are no answers to the questions that have been posed to me. And by the time I finish, the number of questions that actually will rack your brain is something that you would think as to why did you not think about them before. So it's going to be absolutely radical. I am not on any news channel. I don't write for any paper. I don't do anything for anyone. I simply write. And whatever I write, my views, you will only find them at two places, either my website, colonelsanjaypandey.com, or you will find it on Twitter. These are the two places where I'm active, and I have no fear in airing my opinion, right? So coming straight away to the subject proper, we are talking about the primary interests and what Dr. Sonali laid out. The 4 or 5 questions that she's given. Thereafter, towards the end, as to how exactly are we in Afghanistan, are we right or not? And then thereafter, question answer. Now, everything is supposed to be finishing 10 minutes past 6. I've got a watch in front of me, and I'll stick to the time. What I can assure you that the topics Dr. Sonali has given, I am very sure that at least 5-6 sessions are required just to understand all the aspects. Hence, most of the topics I'll just be touching, and most key points I'll be mentioning. Some key points are going to definitely disturb you quite a lot, because I am not from establishment and I do not follow a beaten path. I have my own understanding, which I write very fearlessly and openly. Coming straight away, we are talking about what defines national interest. This is 2021. We were independent in 47. We are still searching for our national interests. Why? There is something fundamentally not right in anything that we have done, that even in 2021, we are not really aware, and we don't know what our national interests are. Rather than questioning, or rather than having national interests and working towards them, what we are losing yearly are our national interests. They are getting lost. And we seem to be very conveniently ignoring them. So I would rather say that I will focus on regaining what I have lost before I come to our national interests. Let me come to specific things. We are a reactive state. We react after US leaves Afghanistan. We don't react before that. That US was leaving Afghanistan is not known today. It is known since mid-2019. Right in January 2020, we are very much aware they are going. Put all the events that have taken place on a timeline. Put them on a timeline and put US departure from Afghanistan on a timeline. What exactly have we done? Month by month, week by week, date by date, have we reacted? We are still exactly the place where we were in mid-2019. We are trying to evacuate our people, and everyone is screaming civilians should be brought in first. Don't bring in Muslims, bring in Hindus, bring in Sikhs. What are we doing? Is this our national interest? Didn't we know US is going? And in any case, what is 2,000 strength or 5,000 strength for a nation like Afghanistan? So you actually think that US was actually holding on to Afghanistan and Taliban? No, they were not. There always has been an absolute secret deal, which we could have so easily found out what exactly is happening. And we should have been ready for that, but we are not. This is still the introduction part before I come to the specific points that Dr. Sonali has given. We are talking about what we should do in Afghanistan. We cannot see a China footprint. 23 years back, there was a China expert, not Chinese expert, I'm very sorry, a China expert who came to address the officers in one of the military cantonments where I was. And he was talking about China and India. And after 40 minutes, I just asked him one question. Sir, China is encircling India from all sides. I see a complete geographical, that is land, encirclement of India. What do you have to say about it? Is my fear correct? And the typical reaction that Indian establishment has, I got the typical reaction. I was young, maybe 36, 37 years old. He laughed at me. And since that day, that ridicule, I just kept on studying this one country and everything that is happening in our neighborhood. With Afghanistan, our encirclement is complete. It has just taken 24 years from the day I had put this question on for the first time. And today with Afghanistan, I confirm to you that the encirclement is complete. Land encirclement is complete. Remember this particular talk. Give me 10 years. Our sea encirclement will be complete. That's our future. And we are still trying to find out in 2021, what are our national interests? Rather than that, might as well get back what we have already lost. Consolidate. If we do these two things first, I can assure you that next 10 years are going to be different. From here, I come to the first part, what about primary interests. We talk about, Dr. Sonali said about physical identity, political identity, cultural identity, and security. Coming to physical identity. 1846 onwards till 1947, 101 years. We have never focused on them. This is the time the Britishers were actually writing the future. Year on year, they wrote future. They finally left in 47, leaving boundaries which they drew by blood. So when we talk about physical identity, did we have any physical identity from 1846? That's generally the year when the Dogras had their first treaty with Chinese. 1947, they leave, and we have absolutely no clue of our physical identity. This is 2021. We have no idea of our physical identity. Our land borders, which could actually have been sorted out with China in 1949-50 itself. This is 2021, and we still have Galwan. We are so much worried about the public opinion that after the 20 people are murdered over there, we have still fighting going on there, and we are talking about post to post. So what physical identity are we talking of? POK is not sorted out. What physical identity are we talking of? So as far as I am concerned, if we just focus on the last 20 years, what I spoke about the Chinese encirclement, what exactly is happening? Our physical identity is getting threatened and we are not doing anything about it. How are we going to define how the next 20 years are going to be when we have not been able to hold the past 20 years? We are talking about 1947, when we got independence. Chinese, 1948, their constitution comes up in a year later. Our constitution comes in 1950. And we take it upon ourselves the responsibility of saving Tibet without realizing that since 1720, Tibet has always been under China right till end, and right till 2003, when Tibet, The Dalai Lama and all those people, they wouldn't even recognize your boundaries in Arunachal. It's only in 2003 they say, yeah, this is part of India. Physical identity, when we talk about, it cannot be spoken of in isolation. It has to be spoken of with the real events happening along your border for your existence, in your interest, your national interests. Coming to political, we are talking about political identity. There is no political identity today. You cannot have the mightiest country, US. All those of you who would have noticed when the second wave had just started in India, and China generally had the entire COVID under control. I don't know how many of you remember that one statement from China that we will bash your head. This is a nation state using this language against the most powerful country on the globe. This is what China said, that we will bash your head. It said, we'll bash your head. US will bash your head. And the second is Taliban. They are not ragtag, 200,000. Each one has got an AK-47. They simply execute. They executed that police chief other day. Where exactly is US? Today they have threatened the US that no Afghani will go, don't take any Afghani from here, and by 31st August, if you don't, bloodshed will follow. So where exactly is political identity? With the US, a democratic country, the most powerful nation, it has divided the entire globe into theaters. Their theater commanders control globe. Where are they exactly? So on one side, China bashes their head. On the other side, there is Taliban. So there is nothing called political identity. This new world order means there is no world identity, the political identity. So your identity today about your politics is not about you as a nation. It is about how much consolidated you are as far as your nation is concerned. Have we consolidated our nation? We haven't. We talk about the management of a political identity. Probably politics has lost its meaning. Whether there are Democrats or whether there are Republicans in some country or whether there is BJP here or Congress there, it actually has no impact on international relations other than your policies now get criticized by the countries the way they want it, whichever way they want to use it for. So how exactly is our political identity? If we have the best of the identity like US, how does it help us? Then we talk about cultural identity. Again, there is nothing called cultural identity. You put flash mob on YouTube, you have Indians dancing all across the world, every mall, airport. You talk about food, probably you get more food in abroad in the stores than you get in India in your local store. You talk about fashion, no, this is a global city. This is the entire, there is nothing called culture identity of a place. Everyone is everywhere. My granddaughter at 1 year age enjoys pasta. Go and ask my grandmother what pasta is, she doesn't know. This is the generational shift. So what cultural identity are we talking of? What is it that we want to protect? Today, the trend is the more your culture goes out, the better. The more people know about is better. So are we using our culture as a weapon? We aren't. We have to use it as a soft weapon across the world. Last, we come to security. The most important point that Dr. Sonali raises gets the least importance in our nation. We talk about physical identity, I told you, political I have covered, cultural I have covered, security. When it comes to security, the most important aspect that Dr. Sonali says and there is absolutely nothing. So these our priorities? If these are our priorities, then the most important aspect does not get attention. What do? I'll come to the next one, secondary interests. We are talking about the secondary interest. We are not clear about our primary interests. We are not clear about what are our national interests. We are talking about protection of the citizens abroad. We are talking about the economic interests. And we are talking about the diplomatic immunity. There is definitely a necessity to actually see that whatever understanding of international relations we had for the last 7 decades, say in our India's independent years, 75, are they relevant today? We are talking about protecting our citizens. Can a nation state protect its citizens? It's a very, very nice thing to say. It makes beautiful news when you are not able to protect and someone gets shot. Today, the state is that if there is an aircraft which has got 10 or more passengers and it crashes anywhere in the world, regardless of its ownership or country, rest assured there is an Indian in that. You will always notice it. So with your citizens being everywhere, so can you afford to have that sort of a relation that your citizens are held ransom in order to force you to do something? We can't. So secondary interests, when you say, we talk about economic interests. When we talk about economic interests, there are only two interests. One is national level and one is individual. These move the people. Afghanistan, you're doing projects for more than, I think, 2 billion projects you're doing, from dams to everything. Who is doing that? Other than the local labor, the maximum people are Indians who have been sent from here by the government to work there. And the others are people who are voluntarily moving from one country to another for their livelihood, for whatever reason. So if that sort of an economic interest is moving citizens from one place to another, what protection are you planning to give them? What protection can you give them? Even US cannot protect its own citizens because they are spread. On one hand, we talk about democracy, the right, the freedom to do anything that you want. On other hand, when the people are there, if we want to protect them, is it physically possible for you to protect? So what protection are we talking of when it says, okay, we must protect our citizens? Our policies must protect the citizens. Our national policies must protect the citizens against whatever people are there. And whenever you see that it is not possible, much well in time, evacuate them. Afghanistan, from mid-2019 till now, everyone knew US is going. We didn't do anything. And today we're sending aircrafts and every day the photographs. So everyone is a hero. What a wonderful country India is. But no, we could not protect the citizens because we did not read the situation correctly. Diplomatic immunity. What diplomatic immunity are we talking of? Diplomatic immunity is related to civilized world, civilized people. So are you going to be operating in countries where only civilized people operate? Yeah, Afghanistan was one. What happened then? Couple of decades back, Rwanda, Burundi, they were very nice. They are, as of now, if you find go and Google, they are one of the finest countries to travel. What happened a few decades back? So again, when we talk about diplomatic immunity, are we knocking a wrong door? So this means it's all about your policies. As soon as you see things are not going to be right, you must have a system where you remove your people from there. No one gives you diplomatic immunity anymore. No one can guarantee. Each and every diplomat who is in Kabul today or Afghanistan and the other places also, Everyone is under threat. So yeah, everyone is under diplomatic immunity. Let Taliban understand that. Do they? You have to have a safe country. You want to protect your citizens. Your policies must protect them. There is no physical protection possible. Coming to the next point, which Dr. Sonali had mentioned about the permanent interests. She talks about something that is long-term interests. Vishwaguru. Are we going on that path where we want to be the leaders of the world? 75 years, where are we? Are we our own leaders? If we talk about a policy that is going to affect does anyone listen to us in our neighborhood? Where is Sri Lanka? Where is Bangladesh? Nepal. Bhutan is the only country till now which really hasn't shown eyes to us. Pakistan, Afghanistan. So there's something not correct. When we talk about permanent interests, this means there has to be something that we have done right in past, based on which we say, these are my permanent interests, long-term interests. So what we have been doing till now, and everything goes back to that initial thing that I said, we are a reactive state. We cannot be a reactive state. We have to be a proactive state. We have to be writing our future. Can we be writing our future when the whole time is spent only in reacting to what is happening? So there has to be a complete shift in the mindset. Unless this mind is completely tuned towards the future, you can't plan anything. We only react. Secondly, one more point, you want to take on the world, a country, a nation takes on the world. A fractured mindset does not take on the world. Today we talk about a party suggests something, there are 90 already standing in opposition. You want to do something good, there is always someone. There is something there, caste comes in, religious comes in, reservations come in, OBCs coming. This is 2021, 75 years, we are still talking about OBCs. So we are not really sure what is it that we want. We want a strong nation. Do we want everyone to come up? So this means consolidation, what I talk about, are we consolidated enough within us to actually matter at the international level? Our problem is, we want to be Vishwagurus, but we do not want to do the fundamental things that we must do here, very hard decisions, which might be extremely unpopular, but a sure, short way to take us on a path, on an expressway of international dominance is much later. I'll say existence. Saying that India matters and India did this is one thing. How exactly are we influencing nations is second. In the last part of my thing, I'll give you some more on it. We are talking about the general interests. Again, Dr. Sonali mentioned about it. Economic, trade, and diplomatic relations. To maintain international peace, it is general interest to have all the nations similar. Disarmament. So we are only talking about international peace. And in order to have international peace, what is it that we must have? We are living in that world of 1945-47, after the Second World War, when everyone dreamt of a beautiful world, international peace, and no one was ready to accept that all it takes is one madman to take a container ship across Egypt, Suez Canal, just put it across the ship, across the canal, and block it. This time it was accident. Next time it will not be an accident. So where is your international peace gone? It has taken one madman to do that. Somali pirates, you've got Australian Navy, Canadian Navy, US Navy, Indian Navy, all warships in Arabian Sea. Against what? Somali pirates. And the most popular YouTube videos on how they were shot. Look at the armament being used. Look at the cannon, the bore, 30 mm, rate of fire. See the ammunition being pooped off on what? Small boat with a small motor. What international peace are we talking of? Today, you are in such a fragile world where, as I say, one madman is more than sufficient to disrupt everything. 20 years of presence of US in Afghanistan, what happened? 9 years of Soviet presence in Afghanistan, what happened? Do these people have weaponry? They don't. So international peace, I think, is a facade. It's a dream. So you plan and there is one madman always to just sort it out. Another 9 minutes before the time of 10 minutes past 6, and I'm already towards the end. And excuse me. As you would have noticed, I'm leaving more questions to think than answers, because there are no answers to what I say. We are talking about the specific interests of third world countries. Again, I say, what is a third world country? Is Bangladesh a third world country? So you'll not be able to answer. So we say economic interest. So what defines first world? What defines third world? So there is a mindset, okay, all these white countries, Western countries doing well type, they are all first world countries. Is Bangladesh a first world country or a third world country? We talk about economic order. We talk about the economic order. A nation doesn't have to be rich in everything. It doesn't have to have everything. It simply must have its foreign reserves, which they have earned legally. Bangladesh today, for the size of the country and what it was few decades back, and today, they've just focused on 8-10 items. And the entire government has got after that, and you see their exports. So just wait for some time, and you see their per capita income going up. So when we say first world, is Europe, each and every nation first world? Yeah, they are. Because they live so beautifully. When we fly over there, we find beautiful airports, everything is fine. How exactly do they matter internationally? Individually, none. Collectively, yes. What could they do collectively? In Afghanistan, NATO. So think over it. This third world, first world, these concepts, we actually need to understand that today when we talk about our national interest, our national interest is about it is not about the military might. It is not about the military might at all. Security, when we say today, we are still in that British mindset that we must have a theater. And in theater, it has to be Army, Navy, and Air Force together combined. You know, that is joint manship. How much time does it take for this entire joint manship? It takes one man. That one man says that Air Force is supposed to be providing ground support to Army. For you, it might be a very, very normal sentence, or it may not hold any meaning at all. The entire security establishments across the world, let me assure you, they are shaken when they hear this sort of a statement. And then they say, if this is what this nation says, and the CDS of the nation says, this is the mindset of this nation towards security. So very, very simple statement to the specialist people in security. This is the military might. Coming straight away, when we talk about concept of security, something that I was going to cover later, before I talk about Afghanistan, I'll quickly take it. We are beyond military might. Number of aircraft carriers you have, the number of Rafale aircrafts you have, the number of divisions, corps, this, that you have, everything is only for drawing room. It is for decoration. It has got no meaning, which does not mean that you cannot have it. Military might is a very small segment of a 360-degree circle of security. It's a very, very small segment, which means unless we have our legal war setup ready, legal security, media war, trade security, trade war, cyber security, cyber war, sea lane security, sea lane war, and academics. Something that people do not pay attention to. I will give you a very crude example, but since this is a work I was doing some time back, and I saw it happening. There is something called reusable sanitary napkin. The work that I was doing socially, we wanted to actually reach out right up to the villages to see. So then we said, okay, fine, what is it that we can do? So I said, before that, let me research. You'll be surprised, 3 educated people researching for 1 month. And internet had exactly the same languages in hundreds of papers written. Each paper went back to the same source. And that source owned the company which manufactured these and exported it across the world. When I say academic power, this is something a nation doesn't utilize. How do you change the world opinion? How do you get all the universities, all the people together to say, okay, fine, this is how you should be thinking. Unless you change thinking, the things will not change. Can you have a strength more than the academics? And where exactly academicians figure in national security other than, okay, one person comes in, okay, as an advisor. So what I'm saying, whether you talk about legal, media, trade, cyber, academics, sea lanes, I am not talking about Navy, I'm talking about sea lanes. You sink one ship in a particular sea lane where the depth is slightly less, it cannot be used. So like this, we have to think big and then we say, okay, this is my security. This is how I must think. And then you have a strategy that evolves out of all the contribution from each of these to evolve a national distinct. Today, our definition is Army, Navy, Air Force. That's our security. And when it comes to actually using them, we don't use them. Why? Generally, sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying, do we want to take up more issues in the question answer session, because we are already past the time.
Yeah. We are at
all right, perfect.
2 minutes and question answer sessions will take it, because I've made it that way, right? When we talk about Afghanistan, we simply have to think. I'll just in 2 minutes cover Afghanistan. What exactly should we be doing? My counter question is, what exactly have we been doing? I will only answer, I'll make a statement here. Think about it. Is the national policy being dictated by what is happening in Afghanistan and the events related to that, or is it being dictated by the party, person, and power? Party, Kandahar hijack, BJP, today is BJP. Person, NSA was accompanying then, he is NSA today. He was in that Kandahar hijack. So we are talking about party, we are talking about person. So my fear is today's policy being dictated by some personal agenda, or not having, or having, we supported the Northern Alliance then very, very strongly. Militarily, we supported them. It's all on record. So today, suddenly one section says, okay, give 100 million to them per month. Give army, give this, give equipment. Overall, Afghanistan, this is one question, think about it. Second is, have we ever studied Afghanistan? Study Afghanistan, split Pakistan, you have the safest neighborhood in the world, Baluchistan, Pashtunistan, Pashtus, they spill over the Durand Line. Durand Line has never been spoken of. No one knows what exactly Durand Line is. So study Durand Line and promise Taliban an entire sea coast to a landlocked country. Let me see how Taliban doesn't come on your side over a period of next 10 years. Give them a sea coast. Think. And last thing, before we come to question answers, how much do we know about Tajikistan and their interstate relation with China, US, India, and Russia? Uzbekistan, China, US, India, Russia. Turkmenistan, China, US, India, Russia. Iran, with China, US, India, Russia. Afghanistan and Pakistan. As soon as you have answers to this, how much do you know about these interstate relations, you will automatically know what to do in Afghanistan. This again is a very big topic to be discussed. And with this, I come to the end with one last thing. We all talk about strategic depth of Pakistan. None of us know what exactly strategic depth is. The day we understand what strategic depth is, you know Afghanistan is with you. And here I come to an end. I have overshot by 3 minutes. I am very sorry, Dr. Sonali. But the topic you have given I am so passionate about it. I think I could go on for hours, having got a wonderful platform like this. And it was excellent. Yes, I'm open to.
I should be apologizing for actually intervening, and you're very right that I don't think one session is really going to, help us here. Just before we go, while the students are putting in the question answers, I would like to say that we are joined by two very senior and very respected people. We are joined by Amardeep, who has, who's in this forum right now. And for the benefit of students who from Miranda House, I'd like to tell them that he's very active on Twitter, and one of his posts on Siachen was shared about 10 lakh times. We are also joined by, I would just request Colonel Amardeep to switch on his, okay, he's left. We have Vidya Bhushan Arora ji here, who is, looking at this, who is running this wonderful web portal called Rag Delhi. I would just like to switch on for a couple of seconds while we see the questions we have. We haven't got any questions on the in-call messages here as yet. So, is there anybody else? Yeah, Colonel Amardeep, thank you for joining us. And we really need another session, with you, with Colonel Pandey. We need more sessions on this. This 1 hour is not enough, really, to questions that we have had.
We all should collectively thank Colonel Pandey ma'am for setting the ball in the right direction with the right intensity.
Yeah,
and I'm sure he has left us with all of us with more questions than answers. And I think we need to ask more questions internally, and we need to study. We don't study. That is what point he has made. And the Pakistan and Afghanistan certainly cannot be summed up even in a year if we keep talking.
Absolutely. I would request the students to thank you, Colonel Amardeep. I would like to request the students to answer questions, if to post questions. Are there any questions that we need to take? Otherwise, I have a lot of questions which I can set the ball rolling.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the
Okay.
students have a lot of questions. We have lined up certain students, ma'am. With
Yeah,
your,
Arshdeep,
with
please carry on.
yeah,
Please carry on.
ma'am.
Please carry on. Please take
May I
care that
please?
we want to wind up by 6:30. Yeah, okay. Carry on, please.
Sure, ma'am. May
Arshdeep,
I
carry on.
please invite Shakshi Kundu from Miranda House to ask her question?
Thank you so much, Arshdeep. Good evening, everyone. This is Sakshi Kundu here. Thank you so much, sir. Your words have been really enlightening and eye-opening for us. Although my questions are quite trivial in front of the questions you have raised, but still I insist to ask them. So my first question is, when Russian and Chinese missions are still functioning there, how far is it justified to call the Indian mission back when Indians are still caught there and when India needs to constantly engage with them to ensure its interest in region? And I think it may lead to our strategic absence in the region, especially when Beijing is advancing very rapidly in the region. So, shouldn't we keep aside our reservations and engage actively for the sake of our interest? Or should we wait to lose one of our strategic partner as we lost our other neighbors to Beijing?
Thank you, Sakshi. Before I answer your question, I deeply thank Mr. Vidya Bhushan and Colonel AD to have joined. And it means a lot to me when I see you both here. Colonel AD, yes, I know him from Twitter, and then it goes back to 30 years also. Thank you so much. Sakshi, straight away coming to your question. What I spoke about diplomatic relations when I was talking about how exactly do they matter. I said very simply that you do not have to give physical security to your people. As soon as you give your physical security to your people, which includes the diplomats, it simply means your policies failed. This means there was something not happening in the background that should have been happening. So what we see today is Chinese and Russians not pulling out their diplomatic missions. And let me tell you, Taliban has got no courage to do anything against these two. Reason is very simple. They know exactly what would happen or what their understanding with these two countries is. China has been supporting Taliban and talking to them from the last 6 months. They are engaging with Taliban, they are engaging with the government. Russia has been engaging with Taliban despite having left Afghanistan with so many 20,000 plus dead and graveyard of tanks. They're still talking to them. Why is it that India is not able to communicate with them? 20 years from that hijack, we still have a mindset. Taliban is terrorist. Yeah, they are. They would be. Why exactly do we not put that behind and look after our interests? We are still talking about funding Northern Alliance. No one is talking of funding or equipping them. Taliban are Afghanis. Northern Alliance is Afghani. Local militia Afghani. Local people Afghani. Let them sort it out. Why do we get it wrong always? And no wonder we have no choice but to evacuate our people, because soon as there are 2 or 1 diplomat dead over there, imagine what will happen back home here. So this means we haven't done our homework correctly. That's why we are in panic. So it's your policies that will protect your citizens and not your physical security. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
So I have one.
Yeah.
I have one more.
Beta, we'll take your next question after another question. We'll surely give you a chance. Can we have one question, Arshdeep, from someone else? We will come back to
Yes, sir.
All right.
Ma'am, we have a question from Swarnima Singh. She has posted her question in the chat as well. She says, since 2001, India has spent a non-trivial $3 billion or so to bolster the American installed regime. It built roads, dams, power lines, clinics, schools across the country. It trained Afghan forces, including women, in its military academies. So, what would be the best move for India to deal with the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan?
Thank you so much. This question was from
Sir, it was from Swarnima.
Swarnima, yeah. Okay. Before that, when Sakshi said she's asking a trivial question, let me assure you, no question is trivial. The thing is that you are able to ask such a wonderful question, and you have understood how wrong a nation can go. Coming to Swarnima's question, the thing is that it is not about money. It is not about money, how much you spend. What we are missing out, and I have been writing on this extensively in the last about from 15th August. The first person to have on Twitter, I have said, welcome Taliban. It doesn't mean you engage with Taliban. You welcome them. They're okay, fine. How do they treat their women and terrorism and their brutality? How are you concerned? It's a nation, they are doing it. They will sort themselves out. Within themselves, they are more than capable to sort themselves out, sort Taliban out. You simply have to just, okay, fine, you have welcomed them. You don't have to engage with them. The thing is, I have been suggesting politically and militarily, do not engage with Afghanistan. Do not get involved. Your main connect is people to people, and this connect goes back to 100, 150 years, right from Rabindranath Tagore's country to maybe in mythology. You have always been connected with these people. So when India has spent billions or a couple of billions from power lines to roads to this, that, I think that's the most wonderful thing we have done. We have to matter where it matters. It matters with the people. We cannot mix up the strategy that we have and the work that we are doing. Your work will always be respected. It is your work which will get you back there. You know the Chinese attitude. What happens with OBOR, wherever they go, other than clashes, you don't hear anything. India has been doing so much development in Afghanistan. Have you ever heard one? So it's people to people connect we always had historically. It is this people to people connect we must have our trust on. And we must work towards that. Give yourself 10 years. Overnight, forget about Taliban embracing you. For all you know, 6 months down the line, they may not be there. So what's wrong if you just said, welcome Taliban? But today, when you start making noises, that you will start paying 100 million to National Alliance and that we should give them tanks and we should give them army, we should train them. No, I think that's a very wrong music we are playing. So when you are training their people in our academies, it's fine. When you're engaging, fine. Medical tourism, fine. Everything. So people to people connect, wherever that connect is, trust me, you will not lose. So let it go on. So let us not connect it with what US has done, or that we have done it less. But whatever we have done, I have full trust that we have done some wonderful job there. Thank you.
Okay, next question, Ashley. We can take 2 more questions and then we will wind up the session.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, the next question is by Ravbeer Kaur. Ravbeer, can you please ask your question?
A very good evening to Sir and August listeners present here. So, Sir, my question is, a set of foreign policy analysts, they see US exit as a plot to destabilize the region so that they can counter the rising China. But then there is another contrasting opinion which says that the greater influence of China is going to rise in the region in terms of strategic and economic concerns, given the Taliban takeover and engagement of China with the new Taliban leaders. So, sir, what's your take on the issue?
Okay, Ravi, thank you so much. You are talking of a country which has got a history, 500 years of history. of not one foreign power ever controlling this. Even Britishers could only control their foreign policy, nothing else, for whatever number of years they were there. So trust the people, not to trust any nation in the world. So whether US left in order to suck China in Afghanistan, or whether US should have stayed there, all these questions have no meaning for a simple reason. US could not have continued there. It could not have taken more casualties. In India, let one person die on the LC and you see thereafter how the WhatsApp groups and Facebook and Twitter and every place, it just blows up. Everyone wants to carry a national flag. Imagine, from a foreign land, bodies after bodies and coffins after coffins coming. US left because they did not want to take more losses. So they had their own deal with Taliban. So whether that resulted in China coming or not, it's all, at the end of the day, Afghanistan's call. Afghanistan National Army, suddenly everyone says they are weak. They have given up. How can they give up? Their leadership is bad, this, that. No, we are those people. The international audience loves cockfights. They want to see blood. So because ANA did not clash with Taliban, so suddenly everyone is sad. No, that's not the case. For all you know, it's all part of a bigger deal. We just have to wait for some time. China knows Afghanistan. China knows Wakhan corridor. China knows exactly what Tajikistan is. That's why I say, do we know Tajikistan-China relation? As soon as those 8 relations I told you, you work on that, a picture emerges. It's such a beautiful picture that emerges, which simply I have said, brought it down to one. If you understand what strategic depth of Pakistan is, and if you promise Taliban or Afghanistan a seaport, period. Next 100 years, no one will be able to take you out from there. But the problem is that we do not see all these influences of countries on each other. It's not easy. It's Afghanistan. 500 years, no one has been able to control this. Not even the British, despite 3 Afghan wars. So trust the people. So when I say welcome Taliban, what goes from your pocket? So it doesn't mean that you are going to just embrace them. No. Give them another month and just see how they sort it out. So trust them. So US, no US, China, no Afghanistan is going to be independent in its work, in its the way it handles. And China knows it's not a cakewalk. So we have to be patient.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last question, Arshdeep.
So we have a lot of questions here, but because of paucity of time, we won't be able to take up all the questions. So the next question is by Harita. Harita, can you please ask your question?
Thank you, Arshdeep. Many observers says that China will be more benefited from Taliban rule, but history says that Taliban had helped ETIM, that is one of the extremist group among Uyghur Muslims. So will Taliban 2.0 pose a threat to China in that sense?
See, when it comes to posing a threat to China, what threat are we talking of? Economic, trade, military, political? Is Afghanistan or Taliban in any way going to threaten China? How much? What is the width of Wakhan corridor? Uyghurs, you talk about Uyghurs, they are nothing else but Tajikistan. What is Tajikistan? Tajikistan was split into 2. So Uyghurs are this side. So you want to do something, do with Tajikistan. So these questions, no, they have no, absolutely, they are going to be of no relevance to China. So China, whether it is getting its OBOR or not, yeah, it has got a very, very grand plan. It will definitely carry on with its grand plan. My worry is not what Afghanistan does, Taliban does, or for that matter, China does. My worry is only one thing. Pakistan had gone, POK gone. Shaksgam Valley, Indians don't even know what is Shaksgam Valley. It's gone already. It was your land. No politician wants to talk about it. No military guy will talk about it. We are quiet. Shaksgam Valley is gone. No one talks about it. Aksai Chin was never yours. They have instigated Nepal. Myanmar is in their pocket. Sri Lanka is in their pocket. They've already started crossing South China Sea. So we might as well focus on our own country to consolidate first before worrying what's going to happen there. As far as Afghanistan is concerned, I've said only one thing. People to people connect has been there historically. Exploit that. The rest, everything is going to fail, whether it is diplomacy, whether it is political or military interference. So give it time. And give Taliban time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colonel Pandey. We have a request from a listener called Sarwar Singh, who has specifically said that he joined this meeting because of an Instagram post from Colonel Amardeep, and he has a question. So we'll just quickly take that, and then this is really the final question we can afford for today.
I promise you to be short. I'll be very short.
Yeah. So I would request Sarwar Singh to open his video and ask the question, or he can open the audio and ask his question.
Hi, good evening, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening.
Thank you for taking my question. My question is that since Colonel Saab said in the starting that we have to take some corrective measures because you have lost a lot in sense of physical identity. So, like, can we engage those military personnel whom we have like trained in our own establishments who are from Afghanistan? Like, I don't know what is the number, but still we have trained some officers. So, like in that case, can we engage them?
Okay. This is a question. Sarwar Singh has asked a question, which, to be very honest, I'll take, I think, one session just to answer this one question. Just one question, I will take a complete session to answer. In short, let me tell you, the most unfortunate part of our military, I'll tell you, our military is kept completely out of geopolitics. That's why on media, social media, TV, you only have theoretical articles. There are very, very, very less people who actually take geopolitics as their interest. Geopolitics is not part of military training at whatever level. So with no knowledge of geopolitics, the entire training being focused only and only to the military objectives, not even understanding Air Force. So I think this is maybe 10 years down the line, after we have a new crop which has been trained also in geopolitics, that they should be taken. Otherwise, other than probably shining our uniform and stars, there is little contribution we can do towards whatever you have suggested. Thank you.
Okay, I will. I'm sorry for the questions which we have not taken, Colonel Pandey. We will really need a few more sessions. The thing is that if the teacher is only having so many questions, the students are going to be like that only. And I know my girls have a lot of questions to ask you. So I request Ruheen Khatun to come in for the vote of thanks, after which we will end this session.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ruheen Khatun, and I'm here to present the vote of thanks for today's session. I would like to thank our guest, Colonel Sanjay Pandey, for joining and enlightening us with their knowledge. Today's discussion was full of knowledge and interesting facts, which gave us deep insights into the topic. I'm pretty sure that the precious knowledge you gave us will definitely help us in our future studies. Once again, I would like to thank Colonel Pandey for taking out time from their busy schedule and enlightening us with the knowledge. Thank you so much, sir. I would also thank our Professor Sonali ma'am for organizing this webinar session and inviting Colonel Pandey to conduct it. Also, thank you to all the participants present here for paying your attention and learning and making this event a great success. I would end my speech here. Thank you.
Dr. Sonali, will you give me 1 minute to say my word?
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, I personally, I must admit that my passion is actually to interact with youth, because I am already done with my generation and people senior to me or around because we have not been brought up very, very correctly. So when you people say that the questions are trivial, let me assure you they are not. Fresh minds, fresh questions, and that's why I said when I leave, I will leave more questions in your mind than I'll answer, because none of us have answers. So must thank Dr. Sonali, Ruheen, Arshdeep, Dr. Vidyabhushan, and Colonel AD also, and all other people who actually, few of them I can see, most of them I cannot, but I can actually see the list of names, a lot of them. And I promise you only one thing. Ruheen just now said, out of my busy schedule, no, my passion is this. And that's why I'm not engaged with any media, any newspaper. I don't take any money. I have not taken 1 rupee till date and will not. So any number of sessions, so far as mutually convenient time we can have from my side, I'm open to discussions anytime. And thank you once again, Dr. Sonali, for organizing this wonderful event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone who has joined. Jai Hind. We'll log out now.
Thank you so much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.